is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Seth Gibree all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Seth has been practicing dentistry for more than 15 years, a key opinion leader and industry expert. He has experience in growth, operations, building relationships, leading change, and organizational development. He is currently a supported dentist with Heartland Dental and also serves as their clinical director for the company. By the way, man, those guys could have got anybody on earth, and they chose you. That's a hell of a compliment. Dr. Gibree's values are rooted in faith, family, community, along with industry and society betterment. He is on the Editorial Advisory Board for Dentaltown Magazine and is actively involved with numerous children's charities. An avid reader and former four-time Ironman, he enjoys sports and is a huge fan of the Boston professional teams and current Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. Dr. Gibree is a husband of almost 19 years, has two sons. His family is involved in their church missions and fundraising for pediatric cancer organizations. Dude, I met you when you were a baby.
I know. That Dentaltown was huge for me. The whole network of individuals and mentors like you that have helped my career develop. So, thank you. Namaste, my friend.
You were saying we were at a Bill Strupp course in Clearwater, Florida?
Yep, back in 2003 or 4, and a number of townies went, and that was the first CE I had really kind of dove into outside of it, and then from there, mentorships and friendships developed and kind of have grown, and it's been a great ride.
So, which one of the Bill Strupp's courses was that? Was that the real controversial one where he was talking about TMJ was about infection?
Bacteria inflamed TMJ. Yes, it was really rather interesting.
And that was a long time ago. So, where did that theory go? After that? I mean, that was 15 years ago.
I don't know if he's still holding on to the theory, but I think everything's somewhat bacterial related. I think as we learn more about the human body, we're learning more and more about its complexity and how everything's interdependent. So I think there's a component to inflammation that is related to bacteria, and so I could see that side of the argument. But I won't tell a patient that their TMJ issues are related to their bacteria loads.
But you know, whenever it's controversial, that we don't have all the information. I mean, I love to. One of the neatest things I ever did is I got the 3 books written by G.V. Black, who's the father of modern dentistry, and they're all 100 years old. And I read those books, and it was so amazing because I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, because they didn't know so many things. So 100 years from now, what percent of what we do is just going to look silly. And then go back and read 100 years before him to Pierre Fauchard, the first dentist in France. Go read his book. I mean, that was 1800. At that point, it's nonsense.
Well, and that's where I think it's so important to continue to learn, because the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And I think for somebody to say, "Oh, I know it all," or "I've got this all figured out," then they haven't learned enough yet.
Oh, yeah. And it's so interesting how the more you learn, the more you read, the more you realize you don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you're so confident in college. You just think you got A's in chemistry and physics and algebra and geometry, and you're just a master of the universe. Then after you've been out of school 30 years, you realize, man, we just don't know anything.
Oh, absolutely. And then your boys realize all of a sudden they thought you were dumb, and then all of a sudden they hit about 25 and realize you were pretty smart.
Well, Ryan, your birthday's next week. How old are you going to be? 23? 24? So only one more year before you'll think your old man might be smart. So I want to start with the, when you got out of school, there wasn't corporate dentistry really, because you'd come out when the first round all went in. There was Orthodontic Centers of America on the New York Stock Exchange, and there was a dozen on NASDAQ. They all imploded, went away. They were gone for 10 years. Now they're all back, and you're the clinical director of the 400-pound gorilla, Rick Workman. How many offices is he up to now?
We're about 780 plus right now.
780 offices?
Yes, that we support.
Now, supporting, is that different than the ones they own themselves?
No, I mean, the ownership structure is a little different because it's owned by a state entity, because we want to really make sure that the doctors are making the decisions that's in the best interest of the patient. So the doctor-patient relationship is a local level relationship. Heartland owns the hard assets, building, chairs, those kind of things.
They only own 780? I thought they were like at 1,500.
No, we have about 1,400 and change dentists, 1,500 dentists.
Okay, so 780 locations.
Correct.
With how many dentists?
About 1,400.
And how many hygienists?
Great question. It's almost 3,000, 2,800. So it's about two and a half. Yeah, it's about 2.5 per doc, give or take.
And I always tell these, when I was young, it was totally respectable to go into the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Public Health, Indian Health Service, and get some clinical skills. And I tell these kids, my God, if you're getting a job at Heartland and they've got the management to run 780 offices, how could you not learn the business of dentistry working for someone that owns 780 offices as opposed to your family dentist from church who's taking on associates that's only ran one office for 30, 40 years. I mean, you've got to, just think of what they could learn. They could get a dental MBA just working for a year there.
Well, I mean, when you had your dental MBA back in the day and had the series, and that was one way that I learned, but I also seeked out, Rick Workman and others through Dentaltown originally to try to find out that exact point. So why would I reinvent the wheel when I started my offices from scratch rather than implement systems that were already established in a couple hundred offices at the time? So back in the day, Heartland used to have a consulting group that they had and that you could hire, and a number of us that were townies hired them for consulting and learn from them. Again, not reinventing the wheel, but just replicating what success they've already had.
Do they still have that?
They do not. No, they're too busy with an internal focus now.
So who's really the brains behind Heartland? Is it Rick Workman or is it Pat Bauer? Be honest.
Honestly, both of them. They're both great individuals, great guys that are trying to do the right thing for the right reason. Now, is anybody perfect? No, and we're the same way. Everybody's got their faults and warts and things that they're working on to get better at, but they make a great combination. Of course, Dr. Workman was the inspiration behind the company originally, but Pat was such a big entity when he came in to really help drive the company forward too. So
I podcasted Rick, and now you. Will you tell Pat I want him to come on the show?
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, and when you say nobody's perfect, my ex-wife says I was perfect.
Now
she said she left me for imperfect reasons. No, I'm just kidding. So what could Well, two things I want to talk about first. We can talk about it anywhere you want to go, sure. But this is May 25th. So when do all the dental schools graduate?
Coming up soon, like this past week.
Yeah. So podcasters are generally young. Old farts like me read books. In fact, Ryan handed me that book there. When I want to learn the endo one, I just can't tell you how much I love this book. This was like, Stephen Cohen's Pathways of the Pulp. It was a short read. It was only 882 pages. But I just and what's so cool, Seth, I had this book in dental school.
Uh-huh.
And now 30 years later, they're still updating it, and I podcasted him, but it's the Millennials Chewing Up podcast. Sure. So they're all commuting to work right now. About 20% of these podcasters say they sit in dental school class with their headphones on, listening to podcasts during boring instructors or when it's a waste of time or whatever.
Some real world dentistry.
Yeah, talk to them. So talk to them about whether or not you think they should apply to Heartland. I'm sure Rick Workman and Pat Bauer would appreciate that. And then number two, let's say that they're what percent of the class wants to work for corporate forever, and what percent of the class just wants to get experience and a job and learn how to do fillings, crowns, and root canals and quadruple their dental school requirements, and what could they also learn at Heartland? So first start with you're connected with the dental students a lot. What percent because we hear all these mixed things. We hear some say that the soccer moms just want to do dentistry and at 5 o'clock leave and go be a soccer mom. They don't want to deal with all the business. What percent of the dental students are like that? Or what percent of dental students say, no, at the end of the day, down the road, I'm going to own my own farm, my own ranch, my own dental office?
I think it's hard. So there's so many things that you bring up with that, and you didn't even touch on dental school debt load these days. And I'm sure we'll get there too. So my situation was graduating in 2001, not having a ton of debt, not the $250,000, $350,000, $400,000 that some of these students are graduating with now. it changes your choices on into the what you can do going into the marketplace. So, I mean, we had classmates right out of school buy an office, not know what they're doing, go to rural Alabama and succeed. And nowadays, people want to live in cities where there's more dentists. You know that if you want to be successful, go to rural America where there aren't any dentists, and you're the one-stop shop, and you're going to have better success quicker. And so each person's situation is so different within school. So it's hard to say there's a hard number that are going to be their own doc. Now, I was an associate for people, and then I decided to open an office from scratch, and then I opened a second office from scratch before I affiliated with Heartland about 6.5 years ago. And through that process, being able to see kind of all sides of it, you see what the options that exist for it. And so my encouragement, and I talk to dental students all the time, and my encouragement for them is to find the best situation for them. And everybody's situation is different, what they want, what they need, how they're going to learn. For some people, that might be going into dental school, planning to go into the military, going to the Air Force, so they can shorten their debt load. And if it were me these days going into dental school, I would really look at going into something like the Air Force to have my dental school paid for, owe them a few years after, and then go do dentistry. And so it's a matter of what's best for them. Now, I know one thing for me is after my affiliation and I sold my practices, one of the big things for me is that work-life balance. Like, I didn't have that beforehand. And so being able to do an Ironman the first year after I affiliated with Heartland was a great thing because I had more time. I was working in the practice 35 plus hours a week and then working on the practice another 30 hours a week outside of it. So I tell students I had separate jobs. I was a dentist and then I was a practice owner, and I got paid for both, but the stress load of being a practice owner was more for me. I was more overweight. I was not in good shape physically. I don't know, time catches up with you. And so figuring out what situation works best for them. What I like about what we have to offer and what a number of the other DSOs have to offer is an ability to kind of come in, learn, build your skills, build your confidence. And what's nice, the ones that get it and have success in the DSO model will stay a long time because they understand that at 5 o'clock, they can go home. And at 5 o'clock, when I was an owner trying to go home, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to make payroll, why Susie's mad at Jane for something she said, and having to mitigate that relationship and not having the resources that I have now.
Well said. The life balance. So how old are your two sons now?
They are 13 and 10.
Oh my God. I can remember.
They keep growing up.
Oh my gosh. I can remember you when they were just born. So when these kids come out of school, why should they work for Heartland?
Well, I mean, again, like you said, we have the best resources available. We have systems, and we'll have 300, 400 plus new doctors come into the company this year. That as things expand and grow, that we're working toward a training platform. We have we have something called a DMP, which is a way for them to help with some of their debt load coming out of school, but also help to grow them quicker. I know one of the best things for me was having a mentor network. That was why Heartland was so valuable for me, is because you go to dental school and you're with all these people, then you get out and start practicing and you're with 3 people and you don't get to talk to anybody, or you're on an island. I remember you always saying that it was like practicing on an island. And then so having others that you are able to relate to and connect to really helped me, and part of the mentorship was there. And so I think that's the big thing of what we have to offer, is being doctor-led, having that clinical decision-making be the doctor's decision for the patient on the local level, but having resources and an education platform where, I mean, we got something right now where we're trying to get people to achieve fellowship in the AGD. So a pathway to achieve fellowship, to build your clinical skills, to shorten your learning curve so you can have greater success over time. And so that was one of the big things for me with mentors, with Dentaltown, that now I see with Heartland is, you know what, somebody can send out an email on a case they're looking at and get 500 other opinions from dentists in a non-judgmental way, because sometimes on Dentaltown we get judgmental responses, and it's that altruistic side of everybody trying to help one another to get better.
We started that Dentaltown mentorship program this year, and I didn't know if it'd be a big success or not, and it was a huge success. Oh, did you see that on Dentaltown?
I did.
Yeah. You said it was a DMP. What does DMP stand for?
Doctor Mastery Program.
Doctor Mastery Program. And you said that it helps with debt. What are the details? What do you mean? How does it help with the debt?
So it's a
And
5-year.
furthermore, of those 300 to 400 new dentists who join Heartland, how many of these will be kids straight out of school versus someone older and wanting to affiliate?
About 3/4 of those will be within the first couple of years of graduation.
And and I got to say something that's so cool about Rick. I do. I love Rick. I mean, I've flown out to FEM. I just love the guy. He is such a good guy. But a lot of these dentists that complain about DSOs. You call them DSOs or DMSOs?
I call them DSOs, Dental Service Organization, but you can call them either way.
Seems like Wall Street calls them DMSOs, and in the trade we call them DSOs. But on these dental service organizations, those kids, all the dentists complaining about corporate, it's because they don't like any competition. I mean, every Fortune 500 company CEO grows up believing in free trade. Then as soon as they got a Fortune 500 company, they're now in Washington, D.C. trying to restrict trade. But number two, all these dentists, they don't provide jobs. And here's Rick hiring them, 3/4 of them straight out of school, no experience. And you look at on the classified ads on Dentaltown, which we're adding to the app next month. That classified ads program is an amazing place to find dentists. Almost every ad a dentist writes once they want 5 years experience. Well,
Exactly.
where the hell can you get 5 years experience? So kudos to you guys for providing jobs to our sovereign professional colleagues who just graduated in negative 1 week ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, but it's how do you set them up for success, and I think that's key. And I think that's hard. Why a doctor is looking for somebody with 5+ years of experience is because they don't want to invest the time that somebody invested in me, like you did, or Rick Workman invested in me, and many others, to learn what we need to learn, or have guidance, or to be able to reach out and call somebody. And I think having those resources, and commend you guys for starting the mentor program on Dentaltown, but to have those resources are so important. And somebody doesn't want to take the time that it takes to really invest and learn. It's hard when you're owning a practice and you're so busy and you're trying to manage it to really help guide somebody's career. I mean, and that's what you're doing when they first get out.
But more specifics, you said you help with their debt load. Well,
Sure.
What does that mean?
So part of the Doctor Mastery Program, it's a 5-year program, and really what the goal is that they have a fellowship and the AGD at the end of it based on hours and being able to pass the AGD test. But there's bonus opportunity that they can earn up to $250,000 bonus that will actually help work with their debt load too.
So at the end of the 5 years, if they work for you for 5 years and get their FAGD, you guys will kick in $250,000 towards their debt?
Potentially, it depends. There's some other requirements that go along with it. Some practice-related parameters, making sure there's some community service related to it, patient care experience. So it really goes to creating leaders for the office and creating complete professionals. So it's not just your dental skills. It's actually some of those soft skills too. That really where I've got a friend of mine who's a dentist who says our job has little to do with teeth. And that's so true. And that's where I think we miss the boat a lot of times because we get so caught up in the technical and we don't really understand how to talk to people.
Oh my God. All the dentists who are crushing it, everybody doing a million, it's because they get an A on the personality, the soft skills, the communication, the staff leadership, and they might be the worst dentist on earth. And then some of the best Pankey Institute dentists who mastered Coyce and Sphere and all that stuff, they just bumble along because they can't talk, or they talk down, or they talk condescending, or staff turnover. I imagine in the private sector with associates and in the corporate sector, the hardest thing is keeping associates. When people say, well, these places have high turnover of associates, well, so does the private sector. I mean, everybody I know, it's considered almost a miracle if some kid stays with you 5, 6, 7 years, but eventually they all, at the end of the day, they all leave and go set up their own, unless you're hiring the back end of the tail where they've already done it for 25 years, 30 years, and they're done with that, and they so burned out of that and just want a job. But if you get them when you're young, the associate turnover is very high. So I imagine this was all put in place to try to keep people for 5 years. I mean, if you could keep your average dental student out of school for 5 years, I mean that would just be the most valuable thing they could do. Correct?
Well, I mean, the other thing is too, once somebody achieves success in the model, so we don't have turnover on our top 50% of docs. It's our low performing docs that are the ones that turn over, that don't really dive into feeling like they have ownership of the practice, or don't embrace the need to grow and to change and to learn. Those are the ones that you see turnover in. In regards to our top performing doctors, it's like once they understand that they can be a dentist and that's their focus, be nice to people and treat them right, and to be a dentist, we don't have turnover in there. And so it's cool to see, and it's cool to be able to look at it with perspective. But it's hard to convince people of that sometimes, that really once you help people achieve success and to achieve a comfortable lifestyle and get in a good place for them, work-life balance. I mean, we have a doctor right now. She's awesome. She's a couple of years out of school. She was working in Tampa. Her husband got transferred to Colorado. Well, she's going up to Colorado, still working with us, opening an office for us up there, because she loves where she's at, the success that she's had, and realizes that she can also achieve balance with it. So with our top docs, we don't have the turnover. It's usually in that lower tier. And it's usually fairly in the first 12 to 18 months of the relationship.
I growing up with five sisters, I saw the massive inequality of men and women. I mean, my mom would let me swim in the Arkansas River, which is like 100 yards from her house, while my sisters couldn't get within 10 feet of the edge. I was putting blue jeans where she ironed patches on the knees, and then they were putting dresses and got in trouble if they soiled their dress. I mean, it was just crazy. And I have had locally here a few girls in my house melting down bawling because she started a practice, built it up. It was doing like 800, 850. She was making 250. Her husband was making 60 grand, and he got transferred. And he's like, I'm going, and she's like, how do you, it's just so sad. And these these women, I mean, you go around the world. I mean, how many countries can they not even drive a car in? And it's tough when you're a woman married to some male walnut brain who makes half the money you do, but he's the man, he's the 400-pound gorilla, and he's going to chase his military promotions, his corporate promotions. And so a lot of girls, depending on who they married, they need liquidity. They need to be able to transfer from East Coast to West Coast. I mean, so I could see how that would do that.
Well, and a lot of people now just want that. I mean, millennials by nature, I mean, that's something that they want too, is they want to be able to move, and it's not the find a location, work there in the mill for 30 years anymore. It's totally changed. So they want to go from one place to the other and work here for a few years, and then maybe they want to move to Vermont and go work there for a few years.
There's also the other issue, the marriage issue. I mean, at the end of World War II, everyone was getting married at 16, 17 years old. Now it's close to 26, 27. And I have met several dentists, both male and female, that started their own office. They were single. Then they met the love of their life, and they're in another state, and that person's not going to move for various reasons or whatever, family, whatever. And they're like, damn, so what do I love more? My office that's 4 years old that I built in Chicago, or this beautiful woman in Charlotte? And so there's a lot of variables on this practice deal.
There's a lot of variables on marriage too.
Yeah, it is. It's the best. It's the best decision I ever made. I mean, I got Eric, Greg, Ryan, and Zach. I mean, I never see my magnum opus as being a dentist or Dentaltown or any of that stuff. That's always been dentistry's always been my career. My 4 boys have always been my profession.
Absolutely.
And I want to tell you a heads up on yours. At this time when they're 10 and 13, you think, man, it's the best ever. And then they're going to grow up and get a car. And it actually gets better every year.
Huh. That's good to hear.
You will love them more at 23 and 20 than you do now. I used to be so sad when they kept getting older. It's going too fast, but it just keeps getting better and better and better. So what what practice management things have you learned watching Heartland that all my homies listening to you that just own their own place? What business practice management from a group that owns 780 locations could be applied to a solo practice? And I think you should write that article. I do. I think you should write an article in Dentaltown Magazine that says, I own my own practice. I own 2 practices. Now I'm with the biggest dog on the block that owns basically 800 offices with 1,400 dentists. Lessons learned that you could apply to the solo practicing office. Wouldn't that be a killer article?
Yeah, and I'd be happy to write that. So have them send me over information, and we'll get it done. I think the biggest thing, and this is going to sound stupid, is really systems, making sure that you have good systems in place from when somebody enters the office till when they leave and what your follow-up is after that. And so really systematize and dial down. I think we try to overcomplicate things. We always want the shiny chicken. We want the shiny new toy that ends up in some closet somewhere gathering dust rather than focusing on patients. So I think the 2 main things that I would say is really dial in your systems and know your basics, what your flow is through the office, and be nice. If you can be nice to people, if you can smile and relate to them, and you have those soft skills and can communicate with them, then you will be successful. But people have to feel cared for. And even nowadays, the expectations get higher and higher and higher because all of a sudden they're going to go on Google and read a review or say a review. And somebody that has a great experience isn't necessarily going to say anything. And then somebody who's got a negative experience is going to dog you out. And so how do you really relate to people in a way that they feel cared for and to truly mean it? And so it's a gift to have, but those are the basics behind it, is really don't sweat the small stuff, and having systems in place so that people know their job, they know the expectations, they know what's expected of them. Because when people know what's expected of them, then they're more apt to succeed. I was reading a thread on Dentaltown last night that was talking about they had diagnosed somebody needing 2 fillings, and they weren't sure whether their front office would talk to them about it or not. And that for me is such a basic thing that she just doesn't know that's an expectation of her. And so making sure that there's expectations and there's systems related to how things flow.
The dentist diagnosed 2 cavities and he was not sure about what?
Whether his front desk was going to talk to the patient about him, and if the patient was going to reschedule about it. It's that whole you tell somebody they need something, then you leave the room and you kind of peek your head around the hall just waiting to see if the patient says yes or not. And they just didn't have a system in place on how they're going over treatment with a patient. And so just really systematizing down your operations so that you can practice dentistry and not have as much stress related to it where there's so much ambiguity. I think from a team member success standpoint, they have to know what's expected of them. Otherwise, they're gonna stray, and they don't understand. It's not like they do it on purpose. I haven't met anybody that said I'm gonna go mess with my local dental office, or I haven't met an employee that's not angry. Don't get me wrong. When they get bitter, that's a whole different game. But I haven't met an employee that wants to work at a location that is trying to purposely do something wrong. And I think sometimes we take things personal, but it's not. It's that they just don't know what's expected of them.
Well, I think it's hilarious when you look at half those threads on Dentaltown where they really think being the best dentist in the world is the right implant, the right bone graft, the right composite, bonding, rubber dam, all this stuff. But when you go in those offices, when you look at the macroeconomic data, for every 100 cavities diagnosed, only 38% are done. So when you only fix 1 cavity out of 3, and I don't care how you fix that 1 out of 3, you're a horrible dentist. And then you go look at other dentists in the same medical dental building, and there's a different person who has these treatment plan presentations, financial arrangements, treatment coordinator, and they do 2 out of 3. And I'm convinced after 30 years of watching this game that 1 out of 3 that walk into a mall, a store, a dental office, a car lot, they're never going to buy for anything in the world. They're just because monkeys are crazy, and they're not going to do it. But the difference between the person who gets the treatment plan presentation, financial arrangement right, and gets 2 out of 3 of their patients to get a cavity done is far better than a dentist. In fact, I've always said that we'd all be better dentists if we all removed all the decay and just packed the damn teeth with butter. You know what I mean? I mean, I'd rather have butter fillings and get all the disease out of the mouth than the best composites in the world while there's still a biofilm. And I see it all the time. They'll do an MOD on the molar, and the bicuspid in front of it still is a DO, but the patient only want to do one. I mean, why can't you convince them of the biofilm that you can't put out a house that's on fire when the one next door is on fire? I mean that fire and biofilm are going to spread. I want to lead to another question. So you got 1,400 officers. You say that you have low turnover in the top 700 higher producers. What return on investment have you seen from these high ticket items? Because some of these items are expensive. CBCTs, CAD cams, lasers, digital scanning impressions. Do you guys see that any of these are, you put them in an office and it's a definite return on investment?
Well, I think that's where educating the doctor on the relationship is, because the doctor is ultimately the leader of our practices. And so having a conversation, if we are going to get a CBCT front, if the office is going to invest in a CBCT, it has to make sense. And I think for some offices, it does make sense. For the doc putting in 30 implants a month or 20 implants a month, having a CBC makes sense. For the doctor who's doing 3 implants a year because they took some course that they loved and they were like, oh yeah, I'm going to do a ton of implants, and they're not doing it, it doesn't make sense. Now, I do think something like scanners does make sense, because I mean, digital dentistry is coming. I mean, it's here. It's been here for years. I mean, we've seen the changes in CEREC over the years. We've seen things like Trios that come out now, iTero scanners, CareStream. I mean, there's so many people in that industry now and in that marketplace. And in the way the lab industry has changed over the years, that, I mean, you can take a scan and send it anywhere and still get an FDA cleared, great crown dialed in at a reasonable price. And so I think scanners are a big future. I mean, you look at things like Invisalign. I mean, Invisalign's technology now versus what it was 8 years ago is completely different. I mean, I remember when I first started doing Invisalign, it wasn't super predictable. And now I feel like with Invisalign, I can provide a great service at a great result, that people are getting what they want and what they need.
Which scanner did they buy? Invisalign, who did they buy?
Invisalign is an iTero.
iTero.
Yep.
Yeah. So when you said, a CBCT makes sense if you're doing 20 to 30 implants a month, and obviously it doesn't make sense you're doing 3 a year, but 20 to 30 is a big spread. I always have been telling dentists that you shouldn't do any procedure that you don't do once a week. I mean, if I had to get a vasectomy and I had 2 docs, and one said I do it every Friday and the other guy says I do it 3 times a year, I just don't think, if you don't make a denture, a molar endo, an Invisalign, if you don't do it weekly, the team never gets fast, efficient, and then you come up to the case like, we're doing an implant again. Let's have a team huddle again and try to figure this out again. But
it's
20 to 30 is a big spread. That's a 50% spread. What do you think they have to actually do a month for a CBC to make sense?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what your payment is and what you're getting it at. So you have to look at the economics of the deal. But, I mean, I really think 10 a month is a reasonable number. And it depends on your fee schedule, and it depends on your overhead. And so, I mean, there's so many factors. So it's not a cut and dry situation, but you need to evaluate the parameters of what you're looking at and what you're using it for.
And I know you have some amazing in-house implant training. I mean, I have friends that work for you in Iowa that became implant masters. You know who I'm talking about?
Who, Ben and Eric?
Oh my God, I have to go to my iPhone. But some of them, I mean, you guys really have a lot of in-house continuing education. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say education is key, but it's about how many items, like a course on bacterial-loaded TMJ, do you take and not understand how you implement it? And I think that's one thing. I was a CE junkie. Even pre-Heartland, I got my FAGD really early. I was ready. At the time, you had to wait 5 years to get your fellowship. I had my hours done in 3. I've averaged over 100 hours every year. But I've taken so much CE over the years that I took, and then the most valuable part of the CE was sitting around for drinks at night, writing on cocktail napkins in a bar, because I was with other dentists that I took lessons from. But the CE itself wasn't valuable. And so it's about figuring out what's valuable and then how you can implement it and use it moving forward. Because we like to take things and not implement them. You go back to your office and your team's like, okay, just wait them out 2 weeks. We'll wear them down in 3. We'll be back to doing it the way we did it all along. And so that used to frustrate me to no end. And so it's so important that what you take, you figure out how to make it valuable and how to not waste your time. I mean, I read all these books like, this is the one I'm reading now. I don't know if you've Tools for Titans by Tim Ferriss.
I already read it. It's on my shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an ongoing process because of so many different valuable things in there. But what are we investing our time in? That's a commodity that we can't get back. And so making sure that what we're doing, we're then taking and moving forward rather than just sitting on it.
And that's been my mission a long time on Dentaltown. I mean, we started the online CE in 2004. We're up to 411 courses. And that's really my goal in these podcasts, because a lot of these people, they don't have time. They're married, their kids are in rural, their study club meets one time a month, and it's just somebody lecturing from that little small town. And then here I'm delivering them people like you and Mish and Christian and every day. Because I after my 30 years, I totally think the number one correlator is first year, the person, are they humble? Will they listen to others or staff or patients? Are they hungry? Do they have a work ethic? I mean, I've always make the joke that's completely true, that the Mormon kid who graduates with 2 kids is 10 times more hungry than the kid whose dad paid for his dental school. I mean, just no ifs, ands, and buts it. It's a 3-to-1 difference. And then there's that thing I believe you're born with, that intellectual curiosity. Some people, you ask them any questions, they go, I don't know, and that's the end of it. Other people just can't get out of their mind. They always got something. They're always curious. And like Edison said, he figured out 10,000 ways a light bulb wouldn't work, but he still got the damn thing.
That's how you fail forward. I mean, you make mistakes, learn from that mistake, and do something again. There's a great book by John Maxwell called Failing Forward, and that's the premise behind it, is you learn what not to do the next time. And I mean, I've got a doctor that I'm working with right now. She's fresh out of school. She's 2 months out. She's kicking butt, but she is what you said. She's intellectually curious. She's inquisitive. She asks questions. She's not afraid to ask. She's not afraid to try things. She's not afraid to move forward. If she's wrong, she admits it. And so seeing somebody that does have drive but yet is humble those are key principles that you can help hopefully coach that into somebody at some point. But some people just have it, like you said. It's that innate curiosity that they have.
Yeah. So back to CB digital scanners. So in your basically 800 locations, how many of them have you put a digital scanner in, and what brands did you go with?
So in the last year alone, within the last actually 6 months alone, we've put over 100 in various offices. That's just over the last 6 or 8 months.
And what brand?
Itero and Trios are the top 2.
Okay,
Itero is the highest percentage of them.
And where's Itero out of?
That's Invisalign, Align technology.
Oh, so you're putting them in so you can do Invisalign. But is that scanner also doing Crown and Bridge?
It does, yeah. Crown and Bridge, and it's also available to do simulation for Invisalign too. So somebody can scan an arch. You can have a patient come in, scan an arch, and then push a button, and it'll simulate what their Invisalign treatment will look like after too. And Trios has some really cool stuff in their technology. So those are kind of the
now. Does Trios do full arch and hook up with someone making clear aligners?
They do. Yep. Trios and Invisalign also have a relationship, so you can scan most any scanner. You can actually scan and then send it to Invisalign to facilitate.
What's the Itero scanner costing? What's the Trios scanner? It's Trios out of Copenhagen, Denmark, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure where the current cost structure is on them. It depends on your rep and what the deal is they're able to do for you.
But your Itero was the majority of your 100, and then Trios was the rest. Correct. So you didn't go with any care streams. What's the or 3M's True Definition?
No, and those are both good scanners, but for us, it just the other ones made the most sense.
And what's the So True Definition is the smallest one, so it fits in the mouth the best, but you still have to use a powder. I think that's the.
Well, and if you look at the meeting they just had in Germany at IDS, the Trios just came out with a wireless scanner. So, there's so much technology. And, how many – you walk around a trade show these days, which are slowly dying, but you walk around a trade show, and they're all 3D printers and scanners.
So why did you just say that you think these meetings are dying?
I don't know. Because I mean, like podcasts, you have the ability to listen to hundreds of different clinicians from the comfort of your own home. And I think the way typical dental meetings are done are different. I mean, back when
You tell Rick Workman that he may have 780 locations, but I now have 780 podcasts.
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, you walk a trade show and then somebody tries to sell you something there. But now you go online, you look, you do the research, you get behind it. It's a different game. So I don't know what the return is for the vendors. Yeah, you'll still have the big ones, but I don't think you'll see as many of the little shows that used to be. All the state shows we used to have.
The biggest problem with the meetings is, like Dentaltown Online CE and podcasts and digital and YouTube. I mean, I know dentists up the street from me that totally became implant masters on YouTube. Just every night they go home on their iPhone and go to YouTube and search dental implants and watch videos for an hour.
I had a friend that did a sinus lift. I said, "Oh, he did his first one." I said, "Oh, how'd you learn how to do it?" He goes, "I went on YouTube and watched."
I know.
I said, "You went on YouTube and then just went and did it?" And he said, "Yeah."
And my friend Chip Castine, he's my age. We both got out of UMKC in '87. He texted me this morning in the middle of the night. He's in France with Tatum Hill learning how to do sinus lifts, but that's the difference. He's an old guy, so he flies from Bakersfield to Paris when the younger people would find Tatum Hill on YouTube and watch it in their front room without their shoes and socks on.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just...
And then go try it.
So I want to stay on technology, though, because these are big questions. Of your 800 locations, how many of them have a laser? And what's your thoughts on that?
A high number of them. Trying to think which ones I have. I have a BioLace and a Sirona, and I actually have a from back before I was a Heartland affiliate. I had an ND-YAG Periolace. So I think again. I mean, we had electrosurgeons back in the day, right?
Yeah, I can still smell the smoke.
Oh yeah, it was great. Just make sure you suction that right there, because you're gonna smell a little bit here today.
Oh my God.
But now with the cost, I mean, it's so cost effective. I mean, there's some great ones out there. Ultradent's Gemini is great. Sirona's is great. I mean, there's so many great lasers out there nowadays, and it's
the cheap, the low cost diodes. I mean, AMD, Alan Miller's took all the costs out of those things. I'm surprised you don't find one in the bottom of your peanut butter Captain Crunch. But I'm talking about the high end for removing hard tissue, because I've podcasted about 3 pediatric dentists. They say, we used to numb, the kid didn't like the shot, we have to let it soak in for 6-7 minutes. The hard tissue laser, now there's no numbing, and we're just going in there, and by the time it would have been numb, we're done. Are you seeing that, or do you still think that's bleeding edge technology, not really leading edge technology?
I think it works in some specialty locations. I think what we typically look at is what's going to work kind of across the spectrum. So I think there's a place for those things, but I mean, some of them aren't necessarily cost effective either. And so in some people's hands, back in the day, a water lace worked really good, or a Solea works really good for them in their situation where they're at. I know for me, in practice, I'm going from this op to this op to this op, and I'm very busy and structured that I can numb somebody up, go do 2 hygiene checks, come back, prep it, and then be done and move on to the next thing. So adding in a piece of technology into my workflow doesn't necessarily make sense in that situation. But where a low-cost diode makes sense, hey, somebody comes in for a frenectomy, or we're doing a crown prep that's on the distal of 31 and it really needs tissue moved out of the way, then that's, for coagulation and for getting a good impression, that works great.
Yeah. Great point. Okay, and then now the last big one, CAD CAM. E4D or Sirona, Dentsply, Cerac. You're talking about $140,000. You are. So out of their 800 locations, how many of them got a Cerac? And what's your thoughts on that investment?
I think the technology is good, and the fact that they challenge each other is good. I was a Cerac owner and a trainer before I was a Heartland supported office. And so, I go way back in regards to the Cerac days. So I think the technology is there to work it well. But, man, I think for me what changed was, and now you can mill zirconia crowns and do same-day dentistry with zirconia. Zirconia was a big change for me, because I could prep, temp, have somebody in and out in 40 minutes, and then conventionally cement it with an RMGI, and I've knock on wood, I have never had a full zirconia break on me. And this is 8 or 10 years later now. And so we're talking 8 years down the road, I can have somebody out in 40 minutes, or I was the type of person that I couldn't relinquish control of my CEREC. I wanted to design, I wanted to be a lab tech, I wanted to mill, I wanted to control all that. So I think if you're somebody that can give up some of the control, then it can make sense if it's replicating your lab bill. I think, again, it goes back to the individual office and the situation that they've got to figure out what's right for them. But when I can get a great zirconia crown at a great price, and I know I'm giving a patient a long-term solution that works, that was one of my big switches for me personally as a clinician of why I moved away from CAD/CAM.
So you're 1,400 doctors in 780 locations. Do you guys all use the same lab?
So I think that might be the difference between us and some of the other DSOs is that doctors have choices.
Ding, 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 ding. Exactly. It's one of the biggest freaking complaints of these corporates where these kids go there and they're all happy, but they have to use this lab and they hate that lab and it's the deal breaker. And then the CEO in his next breath will talk about how do you stop staff turnover. And it's like, well, you stay humble. You listen to him. Why is she mad? That lab she doesn't like. And whether the lab's right or wrong, hell, you can't get two dentists to agree that today's Thursday. So, but anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
But I was going to say that's one reason we haven't gotten into the lab business. So why put that potential barrier between you and your clinicians? It makes no sense. So, and that's the same thing with supplies. So ultimately, doctors have the choice of what they're using. The job for us is to help coach them along to make the best decision for them and for their office. Because, they're vested in the practice itself. I mean, we have over 350 doctors that are shareholders in the company because they understand that when the company's successful, they're successful. It's a privately held company, but they're investing their own money into the office and into the company. And that's the same thing with why we want to give doctors choices, because, and this is the biggest thing I hear, is they're going to tell me what to diagnose. You're going to make me do crowns, or you're going to make me do root canals, or everybody's going to get scaling and root planing. No, because the decision is between the clinician and the patient. I mean, it's a hard thing about insurance companies denying what a patient needs, or a doctor says a patient needs, from somebody that's multiple states away that's trying to intervene into the relationship. It's a doctor-patient relationship, and it's a local-based, community-based service. And so it's so important in my mind, in our minds, that people understand that the decision for the doctor on what the patient needs is their decision. If they're in there working and they're doing fillings on 2, 3, and 4, and they see, oh, number 5 needs something, and they say, you know what, we're in here, let's do number 5 for free today. I want to give that to you. They have the autonomy to do that. And nobody's going to knock them down or police them or looking over their shoulder. And so it's the same thing with labs too, is that, you know what, we have a great network of labs. We have some great labs that we work with and that we get great pricing at. That is the nice thing about having almost 800 offices, is that it does give you some buying power. And so we have great labs, but it also gives us the ability to streamline processes and make sure that they're providing good quality to us. I mean, there's when you have that much buying power, it offers you kind of checks and balances to make sure that you're getting good service, both customer service wise and quality wise.
So do they have to pick a lab from that list?
No, I mean, they're going to get the best deal from that list, but you understand. So if we work with a group of dental labs, like GPS is a group of labs, or NDX is National Dental is a national dental group of labs, and so it's not just one lab. Underneath their umbrella, there might be hundreds of labs, and so there's hundreds of different options for them to choose on, where they get best product at best pricing. So they have options. They might I use a lab that's 20 minutes away from me, that's under our umbrella of labs that we use, but there's hundreds of labs all over the U.S. that we have partnerships with.
So do you have so you have a list of those labs?
I do.
Can you email me that list? I'd love to see that list.
I will check on that.
No, I won't make it public or anything. I just love to see. I just love to see the list. I tell you what, in all seriousness, I think laboratories have changed more than dentistry in the 30
It's
years I've
changed.
been on. I mean, they went from 15,000 to 7,500, and it's basically 100 labs have all gone digital. I mean, how can you say your lab's better than my lab when robots and CAD cams are making the damn crowns? You can't say. In fact, you can't even say this lab is better than this lab if they're using the same technology, milling. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah,
the laboratory's gone so digital. I mean, did you ever think you would see the PFM go the way of the dinosaurs?
no.
And the PFMs were made by cavemen sitting on a workbench and waxing and fire and all that stuff. Now it's
That's a
all
lost
gone.
art. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's even look at removable. I mean, you go visit a lab in the removable department, the guys are in there have been doing it a long time, and they're all in their 60s plus, and that's the majority of them. And so that art, it's an art, and I mean that's the kind of way labs were. One of the big things I would challenge a doc to do is go to a lab and see the junk that they get, and then we
Oh, yeah.
complain about the stuff that we get from the lab. And it's like, man, if you go in and see what they deal with the majority of the time, you'd be shocked. And so, I mean, kind of junk in, junk out. So make sure you're giving them good work to be done.
Gordon Christian told me yesterday on yesterday's podcast that only 20% of labs of dentists disinfect their impression before they send it in.
I believe it.
That's why the labs are a pro scanner, because they don't want to get your triple tray with a cotton roll in there and there's still blood oozing on it, and they're like, did these
You
guys
take it
not
out,
take
the saliva
biology?
drops off of it. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing, and zirconia and cadmium. But I think Jim Gladwell said it the most interesting. I was listening to him lecture in Chicago, and he was saying that the first 10 years of Gladwell, they would hire 5 people every Monday, and they'd have to it'd take them a whole year of training to get them to make 5 PFMs a day, and then those would have 6% remake. Now he takes 5 people every Monday, only trains them for 1 week on CAD cam, and then they make 50 a day with less than 1% remake.
Well, I was talking to a lab today, actually this morning, that they've been dealing with the digital process for about 8 years. So they're kind of further along in this process than some of the other ones, and they have a good check and balance kind of in place, and their remake rate is under 0.5% on
See,
their
that's why I wanted that list of deals, because I kind of look at my list of podcasts, and I've given like 25 hours of the greatest orthodontist, 25 podcasts of the greatest endodontists. I mean, basically, if you're an endodontist who wrote a textbook, I've already podcast you, and then implants. So I like to move it around, but I've been thinking yesterday, I need to talk to more legends in the lab business, someone who's been there 30 years, and I'd like to talk about it, because it's so changed. I want to keep going.
Sure.
So everyone's probably wondering, what practice management software do you guys use? Something off the shelf? I mean, are you guys using EagleSoft or Dentrix? What are you guys using for practice management in those 780 locations?
The one that you love so much, Dentrix.
Which I thought was so weird, because he was from Rick's from Effingham, Illinois, and
Sure.
right up the street is EagleSoft. You just would have thought they would have gone with EagleSoft because they were in the same town in 10,000. So Dentrix, but are you using an off-the-counter software from Dentrix that I could buy, or do you guys buy the software and then get your own programmers to add in all the financial, QuickBooks Online, all the stuff you need to run that big of an operation?
So yes and no. So yes, it's a Dentrix basically off the shelf that Shine has helped to tweak.
Is that the Dentrix Enterprise?
It is. It's before Dentrix Enterprise.
Okay, which one is
So
it?
I don't even know which specific one we're currently running, because we just upgraded to a new one, and we're looking at a couple of other ones too related to Dentrix, some tweaks with it. And so Dentrix has been great over the years about customizing solutions for us on specific things that we look for.
Well, we were talking about Dentrix. I mean, they. Well, I'm just not going to let it go. I mean, I still think the biggest curse in dentistry is, I've said it a million times, and I'm going to have to say it a billion times, because people just don't see the obvious. And that is, when I go to 7-Eleven, Circle K, they buy this bottle of water for 80 cents and sell it for $1, and they know that. Then I go into the dental office, they do not know the cost of how much it costs them to be in that operatory for an hour. So you guys used Dentrix. I thought the biggest move in dental supplies this year was usually Patterson was the high-end, high-cost, high-service, and Henry Schein was the more low-cost leader. And gosh darn, Heartland Patterson got the Heartland Dental supply account this year. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, that, again, that goes out for looking out what's best for our doctors and for our offices so they can deliver the best thing for the patient. And so there's a process to bidding that out. And after all these years of being next door neighbors in Effingham, it made sense that that Patterson really stepped up and wanted to be part of what we're growing.
But you say Patterson next door in Effingham. No, Eaglesoft was next door, but then
Sure.
Eaglesoft got sold to Patterson. Was it the owner of Eaglesoft that got that account, helped get that account, or who?
No, it was just an open. I mean, there were an open process, open bidding process to what we were looking for out of our supplier.
And a thing to these older dentists, lessons learned from Heartland is, Heartland lets them choose their own lab, and you own your own office. You're 56 years old, and you got to listen to that young kid. Does he like the lab you use? Just because he's your buddy up the street doesn't mean your associate's happy. Same thing with hygienists. I've met so many demoralized hygienists on Hygiene Town because the doctor orders the supplies, and she's like, he doesn't even do the cleaning. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. I've never ordered the supplies for my hygienist. I just think that's arrogant.
You mean you don't pick the prophy paste, Howard?
No, and I believe it's just arrogant. And then these people who sell hygiene supplies, they do the studies because they want to know, should we be advertising in Hygiene Town to the hygienist or in Dental Town? And their data always comes back and says you advertise in Dental Town because the dentists buy all the hygiene supplies. And I'm just like, that is just so wrong. I mean, you need to let the associate pick the lab. Let the hygienist buy our own damn supplies. We work with our hands. We're all surgeons. Hygienists, dentists, we're all surgeons. And if you work with your hands all day, I don't care if you're a welder or a plumber, you want the tools you like. You don't want to use the tools anyone else is like. And also the other thing you were saying about in dentistry, the most important thing is the soft stuff, and you got to be nice, and you see it with the patients, because if you reach in their mouth and point to anything like a bridge, a gold crown, I mean, you can point to a gold crown, say, who did that? And they're like, they never know. And I go, man, that was an awesome dentist. He got in your mouth, put on a gold crown, and you can't pick him out of a police lineup. That is an awesome, you should go back there. But the point is, they never remember the dentistry you did. They only remember how you made them feel.
Absolutely.
And you're a 4-time Ironman, and I did it 3 times, and I see a lot of dentists, the assistants tell you there's threads on Dentaltown where they're mad, they're frustrated, they're throwing instruments, and a lot of dentists work out after work, and I think a lot of people, if you're agitated, and you're aggravated, and you're high-strung, doing your workout before you go to work, getting all your yah-yahs out, then you walk in there, then you're too tired to get upset with your patients and your staff and all that. And what is the opposite of that? They don't work out in the morning, and then they're doing a couple of Starbucks coffees. So now they didn't work out. They're amped up on caffeine, and then they're snacking on chocolate caffeine. And then they want to know why they threw an instrument during a wisdom tooth removal and yelled at their patient or staff or whatever. You got to take control of the body. And I think I think the AM workout is critical when you're in the people business.
Well, and I think you said, that all you said to me that I hear is you set the tone for your day, and how you choose to act and respond is how your team is they're gonna follow your lead, whether you like that or not. And so being able to, if it's journaling, if it's meditation, if it's getting your mind in the right way, the right frame, is if it's getting endorphins out from exercise, which is what some of us get. I mean, there's so many, 90% of the time, I don't want to work out. Like, it doesn't sound fun, but I tell you what, when I'm done, I'm happy, and I feel so much better, and it sets the day differently for somebody.
When I don't want to work out, in the morning, I just go to yoga anyway, and I just take a lawn chair and sit in the back of the room with a beer and just
Yeah, it works really good.
watch the whole class do it.
Very peaceful.
Yeah, it's a peaceful scene. Your beer doesn't stay cold very long. But hey, we went over our hour. I just want to sit there and say, seriously, dude. I mean, you've posted like 7,000 times on Dentaltown. I'm just a huge fan of your Seth. I just think you're the all-American boy. So proud of everything you've done. The wife, the family, the business, the Ironmans. You're just the real deal. You're all that and 2 bags of chips. And I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. And again, thank you for what you've done with Dentaltown, because it did change my career in my path. And so I think it takes a village to raise a child, so to speak. And yes, it takes good parents. And I think I've been blessed. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I've been blessed with great mentors. I've been blessed with people that have invested in me, and I've been in the right situations at the right times. And I feel that's where I am today. I feel I'm in a good situation to help others grow in a positive way. And so I kind of that whole pay it forward mindset of what you've done for over the years. And yes, your boys and my boys are kind of the cream of the crop of what we want to achieve in life. But if we can touch other people's lives for the better, then I think we're better for it. So I appreciate it.
Well, hey, buddy, pay it forward today. Hang up the phone, call Rick Workman, have him call Stan Bergman and Henry Schein, and just say, dude, hook up Dentrix to EagleSoft, or Farran will never shut his fat face. So that
you want Dentrix and Quicken together, huh?
I mean, it's just, I don't know how else to. I mean, I got a dental degree and an MBA, and I have to have 2 full-time ladies exporting stuff in Excel. One side Excel, another. I mean, it's just it scales the economy. I have 50 employees, so I can do this. But our average homie has 5 employees. He's got 1 hygienist, 2 assistants, 2 front office. He doesn't have the scales of economy to bring in a bookkeeper full time. And you're not going to find one single dentist in America who, when he walks out of the operatory, said, dude, you just did 2 fillings. What did it cost you? What did you make? And not one of them knows. And that's why 82% of dentists are taking PPOs. If they actually knew how much money they were losing, then the PPOs would either have to raise the prices or they're going to lose providers, because a dentist doesn't want to do an MOD composite and throw $20 away. If he wants to throw $20 away, he'd rather go to, the mall or go to Subway or Macayos, or, he doesn't want to do an MOD composite to lose $20. There's a lot better ways to spend $20 than doing an MOD composite.
I agree. One thing that I wanted to mention in my experience is that it's going to be harder as time goes along with students having this much debt load, being able to sell practices. And being able to still practice but take out some of the equity of my situation. I mean, I affiliated with Heartland at 35, so I mean, still have a long time ahead of me, but it made sense for me. And so I think figuring out what makes sense for each individual is important, and that's where having opportunities like the DSO market, where doctors can say cash out some of their equity, put some money in their pocket or their wife's pocket, and then still work for however long they want to work, but not have the stress that they had before, was a super important part of my journey too. And it's allowed me to find balance and read books like Tools for Titans and other stuff.
Well, a lesson everyone can learn at any age of the game is, whenever I meet dentists, whether they're in dental school, been out 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, they all live way above their means. They all think they're, the lead guitar for the Rolling Stones or something, and you're not Rod Stewart. You're a dentist. And why do you need that big mansion and that big fancy car? And why? I mean, again, that $350,000 of student loans. I mean, that's only half of what a dental office costs. That's only a third of what a divorce costs. I mean, they're gonna spend chunks of change 2, 3, 4, 5 times that size before they go underground. The main thing is just live below your means. I mean, I tell everybody all the time, it's 2017. My car was made in 2004. Why the hell do I need a new car?
I had a 2003 until like a year ago, and then I got a new car for me, which was 4 years old. So I drive a 2012 now.
Yeah, and how many of these dental students could just go back and live with mom and dad for 3 years and work 6 days a week and live at home and literally pay all their debt off in 3 years?
They don't want to do
But
it.
they don't do that. They want to go get not just a home. They don't want to get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square foot. They want a 3, 4, 5,000. You know, their first house will be bigger square footage than their parents' house and their grandparents' house combined. And it's like,
Oh,
where does that come from? Why?
because somebody will loan up the money for it.
Yeah, exactly. So again, man, dude, thanks for all you've done for dentistry. Give your wife and kids a kiss from Uncle Howie.